Hi, everybody. My name is Malene, and I am a psychologist and learning specialist in Learning Bank. And I have set up shop here in my little psychology corner today because I have the pleasure of talking a bit about social learning. Now, if you Google social learning, there is one theory that's going to pop up more than any other one, and that is Albert Bandura's social learning theory. Very simply put, this theory proposes that we learn behaviors by observing other people and then imitating what we see. But it doesn't just happen automatically. There are thought processes involved that help determine whether we end up imitating a behavior or not. The first one is attention. We see a gazillion different behaviors a day, so it has to be something that we actually notice and pay attention to. The second one is retention, which means our ability to remember the behavior. It has to be something that we actually can remember how to do in order to imitate it. The third one is reproduction, and that is our ability to reproduce or imitate a behavior. I've wanted to be able to do the splits my entire life, and I still can't do it, even though I really want to. So reproduction is our ability to be able to imitate a behavior. And the fourth one is motivation. So our willingness to actually imitate this behavior. And this motivation is, in this theory, in behaviorism in general, driven by reinforcement. Either positive reinforcement, which is like kind of a reward for this behavior, or negative reinforcement, which is like a punishment for it. So let's say I'm a little sister and I have a big brother, and he is cleaning his room, and my parents reward this behavior either verbally by praising him and telling him good job, or maybe even, giving him an ice cream or something, a physical reward. Now, if I see this behavior being rewarded, I'm more likely to want to do this behavior myself. And this kind of reinforcement can be vicarious, like what I just explained, that you see somebody else do it and then the reaction that elicits, or it can be that you do a behavior yourself and experience that other people either reward it or punish it. But social learning is not just one theory or one thing. It's become much more of an umbrella term for multiple different theories. And from this perspective, it's not just about observable behaviors, it's also about how we gain new knowledge, or how we create meaning, how we understand things through or with other people. One of the branches of this kind of social learning is collaborative learning. It's kind of in the name, it's learning through collaborating with other people. So it's like a group of 2 or more people that sit down to problem solve or to learn new concepts, and they do this by discussing and reflecting on things. And when you have to sit down and discuss something, you have to understand somebody else's point of view. You have to defend your point of view. You have to argue and reflect much more. This requires a whole different level of processing the information than if you just had to remember and then recite something. And when you process information this way, you also retain it better, you remember it better. So from this perspective, research has shown that through social learning, collaborative learning, you can actually retain the knowledge better than if you just, for example, read it off of a page in a book by yourself and never reflected about it or spoke to anybody else about it. Social learning is also not only something that happens face to face. It used to be, but we are in a very digital time age, and social learning can happen digitally as well. Take YouTube, for example. It's a prime example. There are hundreds of thousands of tutorials on YouTube, which is literally videos of one person teaching the viewers how to do something or sharing their knowledge about something. There is this TV show that I watch called Grand Designs, which is about people building their own houses. And there was an episode of a guy who built his whole house only using skills he had learned off of YouTube videos. He never knew how to lay a floor or a roof or build a wall before. It was all skills and knowledge that he learned through digital social learning like YouTube videos, which is pretty incredible. And that brings me to the benefits of social learning, because one thing is that we retain knowledge better in a social setting than we would if we had to learn it by ourselves. Another thing also is the amount that we can learn via social learning. We can learn so much more when we can learn from other people and observe other people than if we had to learn everything for ourselves. Imagine in the Stone Age, for example, if everyone had to learn for themselves that a saber-toothed tiger was dangerous through their own experiences with such an animal. There would be none of us left today because we all would have gone extinct back then. So the amount that we can learn through learning from others and not only our own personal experiences is so much bigger. Another thing also actually is your ability to think critically and quickly on your feet. This is a thing from collaborative learning, because if you have to discuss something with somebody, you have to be able to adapt your point of view or your arguments or point out if somebody's off really quickly and on your feet. So this kind of social learning actually also helps your ability to critically think and to think quickly. Now, like you've probably gathered from the random assortment of examples I've used, social learning happens in every aspect of our lives, but I want to bring it into the workplace for a bit, because social learning does and can and should happen in the workplace as well. Take the buddy system, for example. Could be a new employee starting a job who has a buddy or a mentor to sort of show them the ropes. It could be specific tasks or skills, or it could be more fluffy, the culture in a company, for example, through the way that they interact with other people and things like that. It could also be a task force of employees that have been put together to come up with a best practice for something, for example. That's a good example of collaborative learning. But it can also happen digitally. It could be that you work in a company where safety is really important, and maybe a colleague has made a video to show what to do and what not to do. That's a great example of digital social learning. It could also be a social platform, sort of like Facebook, but then in a corporate setting instead. Now, this is not social learning in and of itself, but it's a tool that enables social learning. It could be, for example, that you have 100 different doctors that have a forum where they can discuss things and they can share experiences, and maybe they can come up with new ways of doing things. That's also an example of digital social learning. And the benefits of social learning in the workplace are similar to the ones in every other aspect of life. For one, like we've spoken about, you retain knowledge better when you learn it socially than if you have to do it yourself. Take this video, for example. This is social learning right now for me and you. Social learning for me because I'm having to explain knowledge to somebody else, which means it's going to be really well rooted in my brain after this. And it's also social learning for you in that you are listening to and learning from me, hopefully reflecting on it as well. And if you went out and discussed this with somebody afterwards, it would be even better, because then you would retain it even deeper, because now you are also discussing it with somebody else. There's also more hardcore benefits to it in a company. It can save resources to learn socially. Social learning can happen in a formal setting. For example, a teacher and students, that's social learning as well, but it doesn't have to. It can happen informally as well. And that means that A, it's more flexible. It can happen whenever, with whomever. And B, it's also resource saving in that you can use the knowledge that's already within your company instead of, for example, bringing in somebody externally. So I've mentioned social learning both face-to-face and digitally in the workplace, but I want to round this video off by focusing on the digital part, because workplaces are different and they are evolving. And we don't all sit next to every single one of our colleagues every day, whether it is because of remote working or if it's because you work in a really big company with thousands of employees where you only interact with so many of them. And that's where the digital aspect of social learning can become so important and beneficial. In Learning Bank, for example, we have a social wall in our platform, which is this kind of social platform that I spoke about earlier, where learners can share information and they can discuss things in the comments. And this not only creates the opportunity for knowledge sharing, but it actually also creates the opportunity to reinforce this kind of social learning behavior. It's on a small scale, but if I post on this social wall, for example, a new learning trend that I discovered that I thought would be really great for Learning Bank to know, my colleagues and my manager could like and share this post. And by them liking the post, it sends a signal of positive reinforcement to me saying, this is a behavior that I'm being rewarded for and that I therefore would like to continue doing. And it actually goes further than just the one post, because it also sends a signal to everybody else through vicarious reinforcement. If management liked my post, it also shows my colleagues that this type of behavior of knowledge sharing or creativity or thinking out of the box or whatever is rewarded, then it's more likely that they would want to engage in it as well, and also that they feel more comfortable doing so. If you want to have a successful social learning experience in your company, it's really important that there is a culture of trust in the company where employees feel comfortable to not only be in the learner seat, but also in the teacher seat. Another benefit of having social learning in a digital format is that you get to share knowledge on a much larger scale than you otherwise would. If social learning was only face-to-face, you could only gain knowledge from people you interacted with over coffee or lunch, and it would be a very limited amount of knowledge that you would ever access. But if you have it in a digital format, you can share it with everyone in the company, or gain it from everyone in the company. Maybe there's someone in a completely different department who has the exact knowledge that you wanted or needed, but you just never knew that that was even a possibility. So the digital format makes it possible to social learn on a much larger scale than if it was only face-to-face. Last but not least, social learning in a digital format can also act kind of like a knowledge library. Again, think of YouTube, for example. If you have social learning, digital social learning as an integral part of your company, then employees will have somewhere specific to go, whether they are wearing the teacher's hat and want to share information with somebody, or if they're in the learner seat and want to find the kind of information. There was a study that showed that the average worker spent about 20% of their workday looking for relevant information, which is an insane amount of time. So if you can digitalize the social learning and roll it out to people in a way that's easily accessible, then you also create this um, knowledge library and this kind of mentality that learning is an always ongoing thing for everyone, whether you're in the learner's or the teacher's seat. Now, I think I have gone on for long enough. There is, after all, only so much information you can take in, even if it is social learning. So I just want to thank you for sitting down and taking the time to listen to this little social learning session. I hope that you got something out of it that you can use moving forward. That would be a very beautiful full circle moment. So thank you so much for your time, and bye for now.